What a man over 50 should do when she tries to change the rules. She looked at me across the table, calm, like she was ordering coffee. I want an open relationship, she said. I didn't flinch, but then she added almost casually, with your best friend. The room went quiet. My coffee was still warm. The clock still ticked, but something in me stopped. I didn't yell. I didn't break the glass. I didn't ask why. I just looked her in the eye and said, okay. Not because I agreed, but because in that moment I saw everything I needed to know. She thought I would beg. She thought I would fight to keep her. But here's the truth. I didn't lose her. She lost me. The moment she tried to change the rules. Mid-game, and for men over 50, there's a power in choosing silence over chaos, dignity over drama, and walking away instead of breaking down. It was an ordinary evening, the kind that feels safe. The kitchen lights were warm, the wind brushing against the window panes. Catherine was rinsing wine glasses, and I was pouring myself a quiet bourbon. Nothing out of place. Then she sat down, calm, composed, and she said it. I want an open relationship. I blinked, unsure if I heard her right. Come again? I asked, keeping my voice steady. And that's when she said his name. My best friend, the man who toasted at our wedding. The man who once raised his glass and said, to loyalty. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there as something inside me cracked quietly, but didn't fall apart. See, at this age, we men, we don't believe in fairy tales anymore. But the part that hit hardest wasn't that she wanted something different. It was who she wanted it with. She didn't pick a stranger. She picked the man I trusted most, the one I'd never once doubted. I remember the silence stretching between us. It wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. Not of revenge, but of dignity. What broke me wasn't the betrayal. It was the calmness in her voice. Like this was just another Tuesday, like breaking the sacred didn't require breaking a sweat. When you're a man over 50, you don't explode, you don't plead, you don't turn the betrayal into your identity. You just sit still and you think. And that stillness, it's not weakness, it's the weight of wisdom. It's the moment you decide what kind of man you'll be after the storm. She thought I'd fall apart. She thought I'd beg. But men like us, we've been through enough to know you don't need to fight chaos with chaos. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer. I didn't say much after that night, and honestly, I think that unnerved her more than if I had screamed. Because when a man who once met her with warmth and conversation suddenly goes quiet, it's not out of confusion, it's out of knowing. Exactly what he's dealing with. I kept things normal on the surface. Routine is a strange kind of armor. Made coffee, read the news, cleaned the kitchen. But under it all, something had shifted. I wasn't hurt. I was awake, and one afternoon I made a call to someone I hadn't spoken to in almost 20 years. Rachel. She had been my college love. We were young, ambitious, in sync in a way that made everything feel possible. But life, in all its twists and mist, timings had taken us apart, not through bitterness, but through decisions made on separate paths. I never blamed her. If anything, I admired her honesty. When she left, she didn't make excuses. She just said the truth. I love you, but I need something else right now. There's a quiet nobility in that kind of goodbye. So when I called her, I didn't expect much, but I said, would you like to catch up over dinner? She paused for a moment, and then she said, yes, I'd like that. I didn't invite her over to provoke Catherine, at least not intentionally, but I also didn't hide it. I set the table properly, real linen, silverware polished, candles lit. I made salmon her favorite and opened a bottle of wine from the year we first met. And when the doorbell rang, I let Catherine answer it. The look on her face when she saw Rachel. It wasn't anger, it was disbelief, shock even. She waited until Rachel was in the living room before pulling me aside into the kitchen. Her voice was low but sharp. You said you were okay with this. I looked her square in the eyes. I didn't. Object to your freedom, I said, calm. I'm just living by the same rules you laid down. She blinked, like she didn't recognize me, because what she expected was a man crushed. What she got was a man composed. Rachel and I didn't do anything dramatic that evening. We just talked, shared memories, laughed a little, reminded each other of who we used to be. But Catherine's silence was louder than anything in the room. That night, she slept in the guest room. The next day, she barely spoke. By day 3, I could feel it, that under-the-surface anger that hadn't found its words yet. Then it turned, not into an argument, but into something darker. A week later, I received a strange email from a former client. Apparently someone had sent in a whistleblower complaint, anonymous, accusing me of financial misconduct during a consulting contract years ago. At first I laughed. It was absurd. But then I read the wording, the timeline, the intimate details. It wasn't random, it was targeted, and it was personal. I asked a friend in IT to dig into the source, encrypted, masked, but not well enough. It was her, Catherine. She hadn't just stepped outside the marriage. She'd tried to set fire to my reputation, to my livelihood, to the one thing I had built with integrity after everything else had crumbled. She hadn't come after me because of love. She came after me because she couldn't stand that I didn't chase her, that I didn't fall apart. And that's when I saw it clearly. This wasn't about freedom. This wasn't about some progressive idea of love. This was control, a test, a game to see if I'd cave and beg her to stay. But I was done playing. At this stage in life, men don't retaliate with rage. We don't match chaos with more chaos. We observe, we prepare, and then we act with clarity. I printed the emails, saved everything. I didn't scream, didn't throw it in her face. Just one evening I set the papers on the table and said quietly, "I know it was you." She froze. "And I know what I have to do next." She tried to speak, maybe to deny it, maybe to spin another version, but I wasn't listening anymore. Because the moment someone tries to destroy the very life you built after already breaking the vow to stand beside you, they're not lost, they're intentional. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt something far clearer. Peace. She taught me what open meant. And now I was simply applying the lesson. This wasn't revenge. This was return. Return to self-respect, to boundaries, to truth. Because at the end of the day, some people mistake your silence for weakness. But silence is where men over 50 rebuild everything they were told to suppress. I wasn't trying to win anymore. I was done negotiating with betrayal. She had turned love into strategy. And me? I chose dignity over checkmate. After that night, everything inside me quieted, not the kind of silence that aches, but the kind that settles, like the calm that comes after a long storm has passed, not because it spared you, but because you survived it. I didn't scream, didn't throw her things out on the lawn, didn't fall into the trap of one last argument, because something deeper had awakened in me, something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity, and with clarity comes action. The next morning I called my lawyer, not out of spite, out of self-respect. I gathered every document, every email, every quiet betrayal. I organized the evidence, not to punish her, but to protect myself. Because a man who's been burned once learns not to play with matches. I wasn't going to beg her to stay. I wasn't going to ask her why she did what she did. At some point, the why doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what you do next. So I began to clean house. Not just the physical space, though yes, I did that too. I packed up old memories, stored away the photos, changed the sheets, repainted the guest room. But the deeper cleaning, That was internal. I took long walks in silence, started journaling again, something I hadn't done since I was 30. I wrote letters I never sent, to her, to myself, to the younger man who thought love was supposed to mean sacrificing who you are, to keep someone else comfortable. And then I filed the divorce papers. I didn't announce it with drama. I simply handed them to her one afternoon. No lecture, no list of grievances. She flipped through the pages in silence, then looked at me, as if trying to find something left, some weakness, some old emotion she could pull on. But I had nothing to give her anymore, except the truth. "You wanted freedom," I said gently. "Now you have it. Without my roof, without my name." She didn't cry, didn't beg, just nodded slowly as if realizing for the first time that I meant it, and I did. Because at this stage of life a man learns freedom isn't just about what you walk away from, it's about what you choose to walk toward. And I was walking toward peace, toward self-respect, toward a life where love is not a negotiation of power, but a quiet place to be seen and safe. Letting go didn't mean I was heartless. It meant I finally learned how to love myself more than the idea of us. There were moments after that, quiet ones, where I'd stand in the kitchen and miss the way things used to feel. The sound of her laughter echoing off the cabinets, the way she'd wrap her arms around me from behind while I made coffee. But nostalgia is a liar. It filters out the poison and frames only the pretty pictures. The truth was, I had been shrinking, bending, compromising pieces of myself just to keep something that no longer existed. And when a man over 50 starts shrinking for love, he loses more than time. He loses himself. So I stopped shrinking. I stood tall in the truth of who I am, not bitter, not broken, just real. And I wish I could tell you that walking away was easy, that every day felt like victory. It didn't. Some days were lonely, some nights were long. But not once, not for a single second, did I regret reclaiming my dignity, because love shouldn't feel like war, and a home shouldn't feel like a battlefield. I didn't fight her to stay. I didn't compete with her chaos. I just chose. That's the thing they don't tell you as a man. You don't have to win the argument. You don't even have to explain. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is walking away without looking back. No anger, no apology, just the echo of your own footsteps heading towards something truer. If you've ever been betrayed, but still chose to stay calm, to stay grounded, to keep your dignity intact, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You are not weak. You are not naive. You are stronger than they ever imagined. Because real strength isn't in how loud you yell. It's in how quietly you walk away with your self-respect. This video isn't just a story, it's a mirror for every man who's ever had the rules of love rewritten on him mid-game and still chose not to break. So, I want to ask you, have you ever had someone change the rules in your relationship? What helped you stay composed when everything felt like it was falling apart? What brought you back to yourself? Leave a comment below. Your words could be the one thing another man needs to read tonight. And if you felt this message, if it stirred something honest in you, write this in the comments. I didn't lose her, I found myself, because that's what this journey is really about. Not about revenge, not about blame, but about becoming the man who doesn't just survive heartbreak. He rises from it when you've lived more than 5 decades. You start to realize time is no longer a currency you can waste. You don't have the energy to beg for love, to explain your worth, to shrink yourself just to fit into someone else's idea of comfort. At this age, peace matters more than approval. Clarity matters more than chaos. And if someone puts you in an unfair position, if they shift the rules halfway through the game, you don't owe them rage. You don't owe them explanation. You owe yourself freedom. Oh. Kind of freedom that doesn't come with slamming doors or dramatic exits, but with quiet steps toward a life where you no longer need to prove you're enough. You don't have to fight to win. Sometimes, the greatest victory is walking away with your head held high, your heart still intact, and your dignity untouched. Because being a man over 50 isn't about how much you can endure. It's about how wisely you choose what you no longer allow. So, don't live small. Don't dim your light for someone who was never planning to stay. Choose yourself every single time.